So you're 62 years old, you've saved up $1 million, and now you want to know, am I going to be able to retire? Or maybe more importantly, what is my retirement going to look like? If you're like most families out there, we get pretty good at learning how to acquire money, and if we go to work, we know we're going to have that consistent paycheck coming in. But when it comes to retirement, as exciting as it may seem, for many, it's a struggle to have confidence in knowing that their retirement is going to be secure. So today we're going to look at a scenario and help you understand what are the things that you need to know and how do you need to plan in order to assess for yourself if you're going to be able to retire. So we're going to jump right into our scenario built today. And this is Tim and Sally Beacon. They're both currently employed. And we're looking at around $180,000 of income. For this scenario, I've made all the incomes equal. For your own scenario, we can go in and really custom this to what each individual, what your numbers are specifically for you. So we've got $180,000, 62 years old, and they want to retire when they're 65 years old as well. We see here in our financial planning firm that age 65 is a common age because at that point you're able to transition from your health insurance that you have from your employer over directly onto Medicare. Again, for another scenario, we can always run these numbers to see if I wanted to retire prior to the age of 65, how do we do that? How do you look at insurance? That's for another episode that we'll have here on the channel. We've already input their Social Security amounts. We know that at age 65, because they brought in their statements, that they're going to have $2,250 each. So we're looking at $4,500 a month in Social Security at age 65, which would be somewhat common for the numbers that we see. The software here also builds in a cost of living adjustment. And in here as well, it's got a cost of living history, so we can see where are they getting these numbers from. Is this a number that we're just pulling out of the air, or is it based on actual historical data? And as you can see here, these are all of the COLA or cost of living adjustment increases that retirees have received on their Social Security. So we're using the lowest average here, 2.75. In this scenario, we want this to be a conservative scenario, almost looking at the worst case scenario, running our rates of returns very low to stress test this to see, in the worst of environments, am I still going to be able to retire the way that I want? Obviously, the better you do, the more you make, the better the retirement looks like. But in this scenario, you'll see the numbers and rates of returns that we're using would be considered historically low and very conservative. So we have the Social Securities built in here. If you have a pension, we can also build in the amount of pension that you've got. So then we go into the investments. They currently have saved up $1 million in their retirement accounts. And so we're looking at a portion of that money is in what we would call a diversified growth portfolio. There's really never a point in time in your life, especially the early years of retirement, that you don't want a percentage of your money in a position for long-term growth. But as we all know, the stock market is the best place to grow money over time, but it's our biggest downside risk. So as you get closer to retirement, we want to have a conservative allocation as well. And we want to make sure that you've implemented that prior to the retirement, not after, because the last thing that you want, or the worst thing that can happen, is an untimely market correction in the year before, or maybe right before you retire, and 30 to 40% of your savings is eroded. So we want to make sure we have a very proactive approach to the current allocation as you get closer to these retirement years. So for this client, we've got a fairly conservative or maybe a moderate allocation where 50% is going towards long-term growth. We've got 50% in more of a conservative income type investment, and that's where we're going to be pulling our cash flow out of in the retirement years. And then they've saved up about $30,000 that they've got just plugged away in the bank. So for rates of return, we're looking at, in this scenario, an average rate of 5.4%. Historically, that would be extremely low as you look at a 5, 7, 10, 15, 20-year track record. We're also able, inside this program, to allocate different rates of returns to different dollars. So as you can see, we've got 7.5% allocated for the higher growth piece and only 3.5% on the more conservative piece. Now, I know if you're thinking out there those returns are low, you're right. The growth part of the market's been averaging around 10 to 12% over the last decade. We're running these numbers at 7.5 because we don't know what the next 10 years is going to be like. And again, we want to use those lower and conservative numbers. On the conservative income, today money markets out there are getting around 5.25, just kind of liquid money, but it's likely those rates are going to go down. So again, using a conservative number on that. We can adjust these numbers to whatever somebody wants to see, but we always like to start out with that more conservative allocation. Now, with $1 million saved up and 3 years left to work, we're assuming that this client's done well, they've paid off their debts, and they're able to put away right here around $3,500 a month. Now that's considering their contribution along with their company match. So whatever that looks like for you, we'd be able to go in, make sure those numbers are accurate as well. So right here we can move forward to the pre-retirement section, and that's going to show us where the assets are estimated to be during those pre-retirement years. So right here we've got $1,030,000, that's what we just looked at. And then you can see the balance as it progresses, looking at that 5% rate of return and also their contribution. So by the time they get to retirement, we're looking at $1.34 million saved up. So jumping forward to retirement, this client came in and they said, we'd like to have around $100,000 a year in income per year. And that was $100,000 net after tax, which was pretty comparable to what they were netting currently right now in retirement. So essentially what they were saying is, even though we're retired, we don't want less income. In fact, maybe we want to spend a little bit more income. So we ran this analysis looking at to match their current net monthly income. So that was around $8,500 per month to get them $100,000 per year. So inside the software, we're also able to go in here and build out different cash flows to be able to see where do we want to pull our income from. Well, we want $4,000 a month coming off our investments, and I only want to pull it off the conservative portion of my portfolio. I don't want to use the assets that are generating the highest rate of return because I'm going to lose that compounding effect that's generated by getting these higher rates of return compounding on itself over time. And so we're able to allocate where we want that income to come from. So as we move into the retirement tab here, we're able to see starting out January of 2027, the client 65 years old, we've got Social Security plugged into the system, and now we're looking at a monthly cash flow of $4,000 that's coming off that conservative side of the portfolio. Now the nice thing about this software is that it's smart enough and has the tax code built into it that I can tell it the net number that I want, and it will actually gross up that withdrawal to make sure that I'm covering my taxes throughout the year. So this is a true net after-tax income that we're able to generate for this client. We also have some cost of living and inflation built into both sides of the income so that you can see the income going up over time to cover some of those inflationary time frames that like we've just experienced. So we're pulling $8,500 a month in. They've got $1.3 million in retirement assets. And as I scroll down here, you can see that even while they're pulling out their monthly cash flow, the portfolio is actually still increasing some year over year. And again, just at that 5% return level. We haven't changed that rate of return. We want to keep it very conservative. In this scenario, the client can continue to do that. We can see the income continuing to increase over time. And along with that, we're also seeing the portfolio value continue to increase up to the point where when we're 90 years old, They're now generating $14,000 a month in income. So great income for a 90-year-old. You're probably not out spending that on trips and travel anymore. I hope you are. Most of our clients aren't in their 90s. But this is showing we want to continue to bring that income in. Maybe it's being used for healthcare and other things like that. And the portfolio has still grown over and above what we've been pulling out of it. So for this client, based on $100,000 a year, starting out with $1 million at age 62, their contributions going into their retirement, they've got a pretty sweet setup going on here, and not only able to retire, but able to retire and still see the principal value of their investments grow. One other item that I would mention here is a lot of times in the early years of retirement, we'll have clients come in and they'll say, these first 10 years of our retirement, $100,000 a year sounds good for income, but there's going to be some years where we're going to want to take some additional money out, whether that's for trips or excursions, that we're going to spend a little bit more, and we're going to go spend a little bit more of our money in those first 10 years. So we're able to go in and build that in, or you can look at the numbers here and see in the first year, their investments grew by $25,000 after the money they had already spent. So I'm going to look at that client and go, well, based on your $100,000 a year in income, you could spend an additional $25,000 on top of that and still have the same principal that you had when we started the year. And essentially, you could continue to do that all the way through those retirement years if you chose to. So there is additional money built in here to cover big trips, home improvements around the house, purchasing new vehicles. And those are all things that we can also build into the software here. So if you're anywhere close to retirement, maybe you're 5 years away, maybe you're right at the doorstep of retirement, or even have 10 years to go, and you want to know, what could retirement look like for me and my family based on where I am today, what I want for income in retirement, and the things that you're currently doing? We can customize one of these for anybody that comes into our office so that we can know and they can know they're on track for a successful retirement. Well, thanks for watching today's episode here of Retirement Talk, and subscribe to the channel below to get more episodes just like this.